Today, we're all about the nervous system.
Ooh, good one.
We've got some college-level anatomy and physiology stuff, plus a page from the Cleveland Clinic website.
Sounds good.
More than the basics, we're going for those aha moments, those insights that make you look at your own body differently.
Totally. And you know what? Most people, when they think nervous system, they picture just the brain and the spinal cord, but it's way more intricate.
Right. It's like there's this whole hidden world inside us.
Absolutely. Think about it. Different parts of the nervous system, each with its own job, like multiple organs all working together.
But for communication and control, right?
Right. So we've got the central nervous system, the CNS, which is like your brain and spinal cord, the headquarters.
Okay, the command center. Makes sense.
And then everything else reaching out to, like every part of you that's the peripheral nervous system, the PNS. It's the connection between that command center and the rest of you.
So the PNS is carrying all the signals back and forth.
You got it. But here's where it gets interesting. That line between the CNS and PNS, it's not always super clear.
Oh.
Think of the optic nerve, the one that carries signals from your eyes.
Right, for seeing.
Exactly. But get this. Outside your skull, it's PNS. But once it's inside, it's the optic tract, part of the CNS.
Whoa, so the same thing changes its name depending on where it is.
Kind of like a road that gets a new name when it crosses into a different town.
That's a great way to put it. So even before the signal gets to your brain, visual processing has already started.
Pretty cool, huh?
Super cool. Okay, so we've got the CNS and PNS, but what about the tiny building blocks of this whole system?
Yeah.
Remember, neurons and then those other cells, glial
cells, right. You got it. And neurons, those are the stars. They're the ones carrying all that information around.
So, like, if the nervous system is the internet, neurons are the fiber optic cables.
Perfect analogy. And each neuron has got this special shape that helps it do its job. Imagine a tree with a long trunk and roots branching out. The neuron's cell body, called the soma, it's like the base of that tree with the nucleus and everything.
Okay, the soma's the base, and then those little receiving branches are the dendrites, right?
Exactly, like the roots, picking up signals from other neurons. And then you've got the axon, the long trunk, carrying the signal away to other neurons, muscles, or glands.
So soma's the hub, dendrites receive, and the axon transmits.
Exactly, like a tiny little communication relay station.
It is. And, fun fact from the textbook, the axon's coded in this fatty stuff, myelin, to help the signal travel faster.
They even compare it to the fat on raw chicken.
Okay, now that's a visual, but I guess it makes sense, right? Like insulation for electrical wires.
Exactly. Now think about those brain images you've seen with the gray and white matter.
Yeah, always wondered what that was all about.
It's more than just color. Gray matter, usually on the surface of the brain and in the middle of the spinal cord, that's where all those neuron cell bodies and dendrites hang out, like a busy city center.
And the white matter, deeper in the brain and outer part of the spinal cord, that's mostly the axons, like highways connecting everything.
Perfect picture. And get this. The textbook says gray matter isn't always actually gray. It can be pinkish or tan, depending on blood flow and how it's preserved.
Huh. So even in the brain, not everything's so black and white. Speaking of which, there are a lot of specific terms like nuclei and ganglia, tracts and nerves.
Yeah, it's like the nervous system has its own language, but once you get it, it's not too bad. Like both nuclei in the CNS and ganglia in the PNS are clusters of neuron cell bodies, just in different places.
Wait, isn't nucleus also like the control center of a cell? And the center of an atom, too?
You got it. Nucleus gets around, but that's language, right? It depends on the context.
Okay, that makes sense. So those axon bundles, we call them nerves, but you said something else, too.
In the CNS, they're called tracts. Like, picture that road again, changing names when it goes from one town to the next. The optic nerve outside the skull, once it's inside, it's the optic tract.
Ah, that road analogy again. So helpful.
It is. Okay, so we've got the structure and the terms down, the groundwork for our deep dive, ready to go beyond anatomy and see how the nervous system actually works.
Absolutely. Knowing the parts is cool, but I really want to understand how this whole thing orchestrates everything we do.
Well, it's amazing, how your nervous system takes stuff in, processes it, and then makes you react.
It's like a constant loop keeping us connected to the world.
Right, like a 3-step process. Sensation, integration, and response.
Okay, I'm with you. So sensation, that's got to be our senses, right?
Yeah.
Sight, hearing, taste.
Exactly. The classic 5, our window to the outside. But there's more.
Wait, really? Like what?
Well, think about it. You've got senses for things inside your body, too.
Huh. Like what kind of things?
Like your blood pressure or how your stomach stretches after you eat. Those are sensations too, just from inside.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. So sensation is gathering information both from outside and inside us.
That's step one. But then what happens? That's where integration comes in.
Okay, integration.
This is where it gets really cool. Your nervous system takes all that sensory info from both inside and outside, and it mixes it with your memories, your emotions, everything you've learned.
So we're not just reacting, we're understanding what it means.
Exactly, like having a supercomputer constantly analyzing the world, making sense of all that data.
Wow. And then finally the response. That's where we act, right?
Yeah.
Moving, talking.
Yeah, but it's also things you don't see. Your heart rate, digestion, hormones. It's all controlled by the nervous system.
So reaching for a glass of water or digesting lunch, it's all the nervous system. It's doing so much.
It really is. And to handle all those different responses, it's got two main systems: the somatic and autonomic nervous systems.
Okay, so now we're talking about voluntary and involuntary stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I choose to pick up my coffee, but I don't have to tell my heart to beat.
You got it. Somatic is all about conscious movement, like reaching, walking. But even there, some things happen without you thinking about it.
Reflexes.
Perfect example. Remember that boo moment? You jump, that's your somatic system, but you didn't decide to do it.
So reflexes are like shortcuts for quick reactions.
Exactly. Now, on the other hand, there's the autonomic system, all the stuff running in the background, keeping you going.
Breathing, heart rate, digestion, like an autopilot system.
Great analogy. But it gets even cooler. The autonomic system has two parts with opposite jobs: sympathetic and parasympathetic. Ever heard of fight or flight?
Yeah, for sure. Isn't that stress, adrenaline, all that?
That's the sympathetic system. It kicks in when you need to act fast, either fight or run away.
So your heart races, blood goes to your muscles, you're ready to move, like when you get a fright and feel that rush.
Exactly. Even digestion slows down, so you can use that energy elsewhere. But then you've got the parasympathetic system, all about rest and digest.
The chill out system.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that make us slow all the time? How do they both work together?
Good question. It's all about balance. Both are always active, working to keep things in check.
Like a tug of war, one side pulling harder depending on what's going on.
Perfect. Even relaxed, your sympathetic system's there, ready if needed. And even during intense stuff, the parasympathetic keeps things from going too crazy.
Wow, it's amazing. Speaking of systems, I read about something called the enteric nervous system. What's that?
Ah, yes. Often forgotten, but super important. It's like a second brain, but just for your digestive system.
Hold on, a second brain. What does it actually do?
Think of it as mission control for your gut. It controls the movement of food, enzymes, absorbing nutrients.
So it keeps your digestion running smoothly. Which makes sense. Digestion's pretty complex.
Right. And here's a cool fact. The enteric system can work on its own, but it also gets input from the autonomic system, especially the parasympathetic part.
So it's its own thing, but still connected to everything else. We're seeing a lot of interconnectedness here.
You got it, and that's what makes it all work so well. But before we go on, there's this myth I gotta bust. Ever heard that we only use 10% of our brains?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Always seemed kind of fishy.
It is. Brain scans show that even simple tasks use way more than 10%.
So even reading or talking uses lots of different brain areas.
Absolutely. The textbook even mentions an fMRI study where they showed someone a picture and tons of brain areas lit up, way more than 10%.
Wow, so much is happening in our brains all the time, even when we don't realize it. So this 10% thing, is it just a misunderstanding?
Maybe. We're not always aware of what our brains are doing, but that doesn't mean those parts aren't active.
Like how we don't think about breathing or digesting, but it's still happening using brain power.
Exactly. And that brings up a really important point. The nervous system isn't just separate pieces, it's all connected. Everything talking to everything else.
That's what lets us experience the world in such detail.
Right. You got it. But it's more than just survival. This interconnectedness, it's what lets you learn, adapt, feel emotions, connect with people, create new things.
So it's what makes us human, not just keeps us alive.
Exactly. It's the foundation of your consciousness, your personality, your sense of self.
That's deep. Makes you realize how important it is to understand this whole system.
It does. And it also makes you think about taking care of it. Just like any part of you, it needs good stuff to keep working right now.
So what can we do to keep our nervous system healthy?
Well, a healthy lifestyle is key. Eating good food, especially stuff with brain-boosting nutrients like omega-3s and antioxidants.
Yeah, those are important, right?
They are. Exercise is huge, too. Gets blood flowing to the brain, even helps grow new brain cells.
So our mind and body, they're both tied to the health of our nervous system.
Totally. And don't forget about stress. Too much stress is bad for your nervous system, so finding ways to manage it, like mindfulness or being in nature, is important.
It's all connected, isn't it? Taking care of our nervous system is about our whole lifestyle, not just one thing.
It is, and it's worth it. A healthy nervous system means a sharper mind, better control of your emotions, and you're more resilient when things get tough.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've learned so much.
It is fascinating. And to think we've only scratched the surface.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? That all this is going on inside us all the time, and we don't even know it.
It really shows how complex, how amazing the body is.
You know, I thought I knew a bit about the nervous system coming into this deep dive, but wow, there's so much more.
A lot of people only get the simple version, but when you really look at it, it's just incredible.
Like we've discovered this whole new world right inside us. And speaking of discoveries, I remember reading about scientists actually mapping the connections in the brain.
Oh yeah, the Human Connectome Project, that's a big one. They're using these super advanced imaging techniques to make a map of all the pathways in there.
So it's like making a wiring diagram, but for the most complex computer ever.
Exactly. And the stuff we can learn from that is huge. It could help us understand, like, learning, memory, even diseases like Alzheimer's, how they affect the brain.
So it's not just about understanding the healthy brain, it's about helping people with problems too.
Absolutely. The more we know about how the nervous system works, the better we can fix things when they go wrong.
It's really exciting. This whole deep dive has made me think about the possibilities of like neuroscience in general. What other research areas are really interesting to you?
Well, one that's really cool is neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to change and adapt even as we get older.
Oh yeah. That's the idea that our brains aren't fixed. We can actually change them with experience, right?
Exactly. For a long time, people thought that once you were an adult, your brain was pretty much set. But now we know that it's always changing, making new connections, even growing new brain cells, all based on what we do and experience.
So it's like our thoughts and actions are constantly shaping our brains.
That's a great way to put it. And it's super important for things like learning new skills, recovering from injuries, even dealing with mental health issues.
So even as adults, we still have this power to change our brains. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And it means that lifelong learning, challenging yourself, doing things that make you think, it's all really important.
It also makes me think about how important it is to have positive, supportive environments because those experiences are actually shaping our brains.
Absolutely. Everything around us, the people we're with, what we do, it all affects our nervous system, and that shapes who we are.
This deep dive has been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much and gained a whole new appreciation for what's going on inside us.
I'm glad to hear that, and I hope it makes you want to keep learning, to keep exploring this incredible system we all have.